So hello again. So it's a vacation here in Tallinn, and we have forgotten how to use the Zoom meanwhile. So, dear participants, it is my pleasure to welcome you at this conference, especially at this panel, which has been put together by my good friend, Chris Temchak. And Professor Temchak and some other colleagues have been working on a topic of how democracies can collectively respond to cyber incidents, operations, and attacks for some time. And I'm going to ponder on the questions of how we can put together our collective action. I am also going to tell you what we already have done. And later on, maybe I'm offering some ideas what could be done in the future, so that our response would be more effective and we would be able to deter the perpetrators. Well, as an Estonian, I actually have first-hand knowledge with the situation when the country is under cyber siege and the Prime Minister really does not know what to do, and there is no international political or any other mechanism in place by any organization. In 2007, when the large-scale coordinated cyber attacks happened against Estonia. And ever since, we have promoted the collective activities to make sure that we will be protected ourselves, and also make sure that all the other countries in the world who might not be technologically very advanced and have maybe less capabilities than the usual EU and NATO and other like-minded nations, so that they can also join us in this alliance, so that we could be able to grow the collective resilience, both internationally, but of course also amongst us, the core countries in the Western Alliance. When we are thinking of the features, what we need is certainly the understanding of the threat as the first feature. I think we share pretty much the understanding of the general cyber threat. We know what is out there, and we are sharing information, and we are sharing the different methods and tools, and we have the understanding what kind of attacks are out there we should address. There is, however, still, of course, room for development when it comes to more formalized information exchange. And here I mostly think of the networks of European Union, NATO, and other democratic alliances, so that we could even think of more stronger resilience, and information sharing would be one of the corners there. The second feature or element, what we need to make sure that we have understanding about, is the vision. So what kind of goal or vision or priority we are going to take? Are we going to respond to every and each attack, or are we just taking the most significant ones and thinking how to respond to those most significant ones? And also what seems to be insignificant maybe for one country might not be so insignificant for another country. So I think we still also are discussing what kind of threshold is out there for us to respond collectively. I think NATO has solved this threshold issue already a long time ago, when NATO was created, when Article 5 is decided, or when there is a political decision-making going on when there is a collective defense action needed, then NATO has actually declared its policy since the very beginning of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that they are not drawing any threshold and they are not drawing any line. So it depends on the circumstances, it depends on the consequences. So it's called strategic ambiguity. And I think in cyber, we see maybe a bit too much of this strategic ambiguity, but certainly we have seen our collective action taken together since 2017, since NotPetya and WannaCry, with the steps we have taken, and I think the same attacks or incidents or operations, to put it more correctly for the lawyers, what we are now receiving would be also treated accordingly and would be important enough, but not, of course, reaching yet threshold of armed conflict. Then what we also need to share is the understanding of our own capabilities. So our own capabilities is something where all of our countries are still working on, and we are at the differing layers, and some other countries might have maybe some niche capabilities which are very important, and they might be also developing the capabilities that we might not have, but at the same time what we can actually share collectively is making us stronger, and we have seen this in cases of the recent attributions, that we actually, when sharing information, we can put together our response and make sure that not just the technical information about cyber attacks, but also other elements of the syndicated intelligence come together when we need to attribute and respond collectively. And then, of course, we also need to have a certain understanding how to make those response steps legitimate in the eyes of the larger international community. And I think many of you have noticed that in the margins of the UN General Assembly 73 or 74, we have organized, the US government has organized the meeting, and 20 plus ministers of foreign affairs attended this UN General Assembly side meeting, pledging to collective response and deterrence initiative. So we have all the elements ready for more credible collective deterrence. And one of the big questions what we also have had for a long time is how can we bring not just the security side into this equation, but also the economic side. And I am very glad to maybe share my experience of putting together the European cyber diplomacy toolbox, when we were able to also convince the economic side of the house that the sanctions in order to address cyber attacks and other measures could be taken collectively by all the EU member states. And by now we have been able to do it twice. Actually, we have been implementing sanctions twice with all the 27, 28 member states agreeing on those. So that's already quite remarkable to agree on one issue amongst a large number of countries. And to do it twice is even more remarkable. So there are still many challenges that we need to cross. I think one of the major topics what I see, which is coming up now and then, and where we clearly need to put more effort, is training, exercise, and education. Exercises at the multinational level have taken place and are taking place. There is a technical lock shields exercise provided by and developed by the NATO Cyber Defense Center here in Tallinn, which has been quite usefully taken together many technical communities amongst the NATO countries and also beyond NATO countries. And there are other useful technical exercises. But I also would like to stress the layer of decision makers and strategic level, especially strategic level decision makers. When something serious happens in your country, it is good, of course, to have technical experts available and everybody knowing their place in the larger response system. But it's also very important that your politicians, ministers, prime ministers actually understand what are those major elements they need to take into account when responding to major cyber crises. And the more exercises you can organize at the decision-making level and for the strategic political level, the better it is. Estonia has organized one exercise for the defense ministers during our EU presidency in 2017, which proved to be very useful because we saw very different layers of maturity in the European Union at that time. It was a long time ago, of course, as well for cyber. But in 2020, last year, we organized the strategic level exercise for the Nordic and Baltic foreign ministers. And I was extremely happy to see such a high level of awareness amongst the foreign ministers in our corner of the world on the cyber issues. And we thought that this exercise was very useful and very efficient, and the ministers were very well briefed by, of course, our cyber colleagues in the capitals beforehand. So, and I know that in the coming year, the French are going to organize another EU level exercise. So we are going to test even more of our collective response, and we are hopefully then learning even more and able to provide a better response to what actually waits us out there. So if I need to do those maybe 3 points for all of you, then first of all, let's make sure that we have the same types of expectations of our collective response, also the same concepts and the same vision, what we want to achieve. Secondly, we also need the mechanism that brings us together, whether it's already existing mechanism as we have the NATO, EU and other international organizations, or whether it's something new. If it's something new, then again, it has to be very well articulated and explained, because majority of decision makers in the world would operate with already existing frameworks in their minds. So, and the third element, which I cannot overestimate enough, is the question of capabilities, training, exercises, and education, because the workforce that is doing this is very important in all our countries. So that's why I am very glad to support always the academic panels and Chris and some other academic thinkers in this field. So thank you very much, and I hope that the panel will be very enriching and interesting.